Greetings, Moonstompers. A very warm welcome to you all. I'm Mrs. Moonstomper.
And I'm Mr. Moonstomper. Guys, it's great to have you on board. Thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. If you watched the last videos, if you commented, if you subscribed, if you shared, if you liked, if you've taken part, thank you so much indeed. If this is your first time on Moonstomper Originals, thank you so much for tuning in. Stick around and stay tuned. We've got an amazing programme for you this week, have we not, Mrs. Moonstomper?
We certainly have, Mr. Moonstomper.
So what's this week all about, Mrs. Moonstomper?
Pirate Radio.
Bit obvious because you saw it in the thumbnail, obviously. So what we're going to do first, watch this VT because this will give you a good overview on today's topic. So back in a moment. Enjoy.
60 years ago, a radio revolution swept in from the Essex coast. Radio Caroline went on air from a pirate radio ship. In 1964, the BBC had a monopoly on the radio waves. Radio 1 hadn't even been born. Caroline fired the gun on the pirate radio craze of the 60s.
Suddenly, the airwaves were full of pirate radio in 1964 from not just Caroline but other stations. And of course, they were playing music almost 24 hours a day. And they all had disc jockeys that had personalities. They had enormous audiences. I mean, some of the stations had up to 12 million listeners, which is a fabulous amount of numbers.
It's Radio Caroline on 199.
Happy radio, which always left listeners smiling.
Anybody hearing this broadcast perhaps could help us by telephoning the Coast Guard to register a complaint, possibly by contacting anybody in authority that you think could help us. This is the radio ship Ross Revenge, broadcasting from the international waters of the North Sea, and for the moment anyway we'll return you to our regular programs. Thank you.
It appears that we are now being boarded by a Dutch tug. We are being boarded by a Dutch tug. Representatives of the Dutch government have just boarded the Ross Revenge. At the moment, one of the people that's come aboard has been violent towards our engineer. We haven't a clue what's going on at the moment. All we can say is these guys are definitely not here to take photographs. No, and...
licensed stations, and bringing into question Britain's whole highly regulated system of radio broadcasting. Operating on a shoestring, with cheap equipment that clutters the airwaves with signals, the Dread Broadcasting Corporation staff believe that the music they play, and the chat in between, give a service that legitimate radio cannot provide.
You've got communities, you've got Indian, you've got Greeks, you've got blacks, but the BBC and Capital and LBC can't cater for these communities. They can't do.
So in order to make that point, you're prepared to break the law and run an illegal station?
We have to, because they won't listen otherwise. We have to.
And face whatever penalties you may get?
Of course, have to.
Even if it means paying huge fines or possibly
going to prison. If it means going to prison.
Last week, for the 15th time in 4 years, DBC's transmitter was seized by members of the 270-strong Radio Investigation Service. They operate from this London office of the Trade and Industry Department and other bases around the country.
Broadcasting live from the North Sea on 319 metres, 96...
Pirate radio got its name from the ships that broadcast pop music from the North Sea. Today there are just two. They're foreign-owned and outside British jurisdiction.
News brought to you by Newsweek magazine.
The investigators' monitoring equipment has already detected no fewer than 73 illegal land-based stations broadcasting in Britain this year. Some are run by ego-trippers and show-offs. Others are thoroughgoing commercial concerns.
It's a good morning, Sunshine Radio.
This Shropshire field is home to the powerful transmitter of Sunshine Radio. The security precautions are to deter the investigators. The equipment is housed in the caravan. The actual studio is in a farmyard building.
Sunshine Radio music. music.
A reminder that you get a chance to phone in and win on the pop quiz around 12:45 today. It's now 12:22.
Sunshine's diet is pop music and local tidbits. The 9 minutes of advertising in each hour are voiced by the disc jockeys themselves.
Independent radio news.
And on the hour, Sunshine Radio relays independent radio news from the licensed Signal Radio at Stoke-on-Trent, an act of pure radio piracy. Sunshine is making tens of thousands in annual profit. What does owner Graham Simons think he's achieving?
Exactly what we have achieved by providing a local service, a local radio service to this area that is both popular, profitable, viable, I suppose, and it's got a future. I believe it's got a future.
Do you think it demonstrates how cheaply these things can be done?
It's not very cheap.
Nonetheless, Sunshine Radio cost a small fraction of what it would have cost to be legal. Pirates own their own transmitters, so they can determine how far away their stations can be heard. Sunshine purports to serve South Shropshire. In fact, it can be heard loud and clear in several adjoining counties.
Phil Fearon and Galaxy, everybody's laughing. It's Radio Wyvern on a Wednesday afternoon.
40 miles away in Worcester is Radio Wyvern, one of Britain's 43 commercial radio stations and one of the 10 that are not making money.
And Worcestershire.
Radio Wyvern.
Wyvern News, this is David.
One reason for that is the far smaller cost to advertisers of buying time on Sunshine, which is heard in much of Wyvern's area. In any city that is to have a commercial radio station, the Independent Broadcasting Authority, the IBA, requires local citizens to raise at least £500,000 and pass stringent tests. Always hot on their trail.
And on that particular evening, we got on the bus from the studio, got the bus across town, set up the equipment, and about 3/4 of an hour later, we were surrounded. People had come out of bushes. There were 2 plainclothes policemen, 8 British Telecom officials, and they just surrounded the site. Well, the chap in charge of the investigation, when we asked him how, bearing in mind the fact that we hadn't had much publicity by that time, there hadn't been any complaints of interference to our knowledge or even to their knowledge, we asked him why it was they'd started tracking us down. And he said the directive came from London, came from the Department of Trade and Industry in London. And his very words were, "You made a mistake calling yourselves Sheffield Peace Radio. They don't like that down there."
The signal's very, very strong, and it's to our right. Can we go up this road up here?
We've got to go around this roundabout.
Oh, well, yeah, you go round the roundabout. Don't go the wrong bloody way.
But the radio investigators have their own problems. Some have even had their families threatened. They have to deal with all forms of interference, not just pirates.
Up here? How about up here?
That's it.
Yeah, we're looking straight at it now. Straight at it.
These investigators are using direction-finding gear to pinpoint an illegal transmitter before seizing it.
Someone looking out the window up there too.
For the past month, a change in the law has enabled them to do that without a court order.
I think this must be it. Yeah, that's it. We've got him.
There have recently been 10 transmitter seizures, and court cases are pending. The Radio Investigation Service faces an uphill job. Many magistrates simply don't take illegal broadcasting seriously. It's a victimless crime that does no apparent harm to anybody. And some pirates say they'd rather be legal and offer to pay music copyright fees. Consequently, they usually suffer no more than the standard fine. Of 40 successful prosecutions of illegal broadcasters last year, 38 left the court and went straight back onto the air.
Radio Jackie, Southwest.
Radio Jackie in suburban London is a case in point. It's had transmitters seized and some court cases, but has been on the air for 15 years. It's supported by local Conservative MPs and councillors, and the radio investigators say there's increasing political pressure to lay off Jackie and other popular pirate stations like it. Jackie's owner enjoys establishment sympathy.
We have had instances where a local magistrate has said that he and his wife have never spent such an enjoyable weekend listening to Radio Jackie, and after this instance he came out of the court and he spent some time talking to us and taking car stickers and various bits and pieces that the station produces.
And that's when he just fined you £400 for breaking the law?
He was very sympathetic towards our cause.
But he just fined you for breaking the law?
He had.
Welcome back, guys. We really appreciate it. We really do that.
Yes, we do.
So, Mrs. Moonstomper.
Yes, Mr. Moonstomper.
Radio Caroline.
Yes.
It is this year, guys. It's the 60th anniversary of Radio Caroline, which started its first broadcast Easter 1964.
It certainly did.
But I'm telling you something you actually probably already knew. I think everybody knew that. That is a long time. However, it didn't always go. That time it finished in 2013, and you saw that in the video early, guys. How sad that.
I know.
What's your earliest memory of Radio Caroline? And we'll come to other pirate radio stations shortly.
Growing up in our house, we've always had the radio on, listening to all the latest pop tunes and the news and everything else to go with it.
Yeah, we grew up with the radio as well. So when we were growing up, we had 2 or 3 channels on the TV.
Yes.
That was it.
Just 3, yes.
Yeah, so if you're from the United States, I think you guys were actually sports over there. You had more, way more. But then the USA is how many times bigger than the United Kingdom?
Gosh.
It's absolutely
so
massive.
vast.
Yeah, and you guys grew up with rock and roll music. We had to import it. And at that point in time, in 1964, it wasn't getting the airplay it needed. So the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, I think it does stand for something else, but I can't use it on this channel, we'll keep it clean. They ruled the roost in terms of radio.
They did.
There were very few commercial radio stations that were actually punting out pop music, so the BBC punted out their normal rubbish. And the youngsters of Great Britain were starved.
Yes.
They were starved of music completely.
They were.
So Radio Caroline, when that started, and it started by, what was the name of the chap who started it?
He's an Irish musician, Ronan O'Reilly and Alan Crawford.
There you go.
Yes.
When they started theirs, Atlantic was starting theirs. Now Atlantic was commercial. It was really commercial, and it was backed by investors, and it was going to be absolutely massive. But that took longer to get off the ground. But because there were multi-investors. But Caroline was probably wasn't the first one that took to the place.
Oh no!
Because there was one up in, I think it was somewhere up in the North Sea, and it was something to do with Denmark. We'll put the name of the boat on the screen, actually, but it didn't quite reach the UK shores in terms of transmission. And there was also Luxembourg, but that was land-based.
Yes.
And that's different entirely. We'll come to that shortly. But Caroline played pop music 24/7.
Yes.
And that's what the youngsters of the United Kingdom wanted.
And that's what they got.
But when that sprung up, there was about 100 other radio stations that also sprung up. And the UK government knew they'd got an absolute fight on their hands. Because those guys that got those radio stations were clued up. And they put those boats in international waters. The reason being is they didn't have to follow anybody's laws, any country's laws. It was international waters laws, and that's completely different.
Yes, it is.
So they weren't in anybody's jurisdiction, which is really, really clever. And born out of that were 12 million followers to some of those programmes. As you saw in that BT earlier, 12 million people tuning in.
This is such a high number.
It is, and the thing is when you're a pop band, a rock and roll band, and you want airplay, you know, where are you going to have that played on? You're going to be played on the BBC, who've got 3 million listeners or 12 million listeners on a pirate radio.
And now which one I choose?
The answer's obvious, isn't it?
It's a no-brainer.
It is, because those pirate radio stations also targeted young audiences as well.
They did.
There were radio stations that were geared up to teenage girls, teenage boys, and mods and rockers, and they knew exactly who they wanted to target, and it was absolutely brilliant. So if you could tune in, you'd be tuning in.
Of course.
Much to everybody's disgust, but that's the way it went.
It did, yes.
And although I don't quite remember those days in the 60s,
no.
Growing up in the 70s, for definite.
Oh yes, without a doubt.
For absolute definite. And I don't know about you, but every time I tuned into Caroline or Atlantic or another pirate radio station, I always felt a little bit naughty doing that, thinking, oh, it's a bit naughty.
And
but
because you knew it went.
Yeah, exactly. But I think everybody thought that as well, and that was the excitement. The excitement was sometimes to play the whole song.
Oh yes.
Yes, it was commercialised because that's how they made the money, and they were clever in doing that.
Yes.
Because they knew they'd got like a big reach. The other player was Radio Luxembourg.
Oh yes.
Now Luxembourg, the British government said that was a pirate radio station, and the only reason being is because it encroached British airwaves.
My goodness.
And yes, it had got its own broadcasting. It got its own broadcasting facility. It's just that it didn't have a British radio licence to broadcast in this country. However, there was nothing the British government could do about that. So Luxembourg had a far reach. And the funny thing about Luxembourg, although it was deemed as pirate by the British government and the DCI, which was the Department of Trade and Industry, the guys who look after radios and radio licences and broadcasting affairs, it was still, their scheduling was still advertised in the mainstream press.
Wow.
Obviously not the Radio Times or the TV Times,
but
it was advertised in the mainstream press what was coming up on that programme.
Wow, gosh.
And that was broadcast in multi-languages, wasn't it?
Yes, that was a multilingual broadcasting, yes.
Yeah, so that would have been in French for definite.
Oh yes.
Maybe Spanish and Italian, who knows? Not that I speak any of those very well at all.
No, same here.
So, and the weird thing is we always, in the United Kingdom, pirate radio, we invented pirate radio. The Americans, so the USA, had got what was called, they called it free radio.
Oh yes.
That was also a form of pirate radio.
Yes.
Because there was no broadcasting licence, and I think it was in places such as San Francisco, California, those areas.
Big wide cities.
Yeah, where they got what they called free radio. In fact, there's even a channel called Free Radio in this country now. And Free Radio, that actually started off as a pirate radio station, would you believe? Yeah, it did, yeah. And quite a few others, the ones you hear now, Kiss. So if you're from the United Kingdom and you've ever heard of Kiss or Kistery and radios that ilk, they were pirate radio stations, although they weren't sea-based, they were land-based, mainly in the City of London. So after that came the inland pirate radio stations. But in fact, let's park that for a moment. And I think there's an important point there. So Radio Caroline gave us a marvellous thing. And what was that?
The DJs.
The DJs. Now, the reason it gave us DJs is because they employed DJs. So the guys broadcasting with DJs first and foremost. So if you don't know what a DJ is, I don't know where you've been. It's a disc jockey.
Disc jockey.
So those guys spun records for a living.
Yes, they even had their own newsreader on Radio Caroline.
They did indeed.
Yes.
But digress away from that. BBC did not have DJs.
No.
They had radio presenters.
Just the presenters,
and there is a marked difference.
There is. So
to work on BBC Radio and BBC TV, in fact, I'll dig it out actually.
Yes.
It was How to Speak. And I've actually got a copy of that from when I did my management degree. And it was actually How to Speak in BBC Plum English.
Oh, the Queen's English.
Almost, yeah. And
don't you know?
It's literally breaks it down into phonics, and it's quite funny. And that's how they taught their presenters and their television presenters as well.
Oh yes.
And Caroline and Atlantic and all the others weren't like that. They were normal guys like you and us, and that's what made them popular.
Yes.
So
speak your dialect.
They did. So what famous DJs do you remember?
Dave Lee Travis,
DLT,
Simon D, John Peel, Tommy Blackburn, Tommy Vance, Johnny Walker, Emperor Roscoe from the States,
and what was his name? I'll think of his name in a minute. In fact, there was 38 DJs.
Yeah, there's just so many to name.
38 DJs.
Yes.
That is something else.
It is.
However, the BBC being the BBC, never want to miss a trick and misspent people's licence, but no, I'm joking, guys. They then got their own back. Because they didn't cater for younger people at all in those days. Or if they did, it was few and far between.
Yeah, it's just the older generation that catered for, didn't they?
They did.
Like your mums, dads and your grandparents.
They did, and you know, kids kind of had it bashed into them. They'd be like, I'd be like my dad.
Yes.
Or you'd be like your mum. You'd
That's
dress
how it
the
was,
same. You'd have your hair the same. And
yes.
It's all a bit brown, isn't it? It's a
brown,
bit beige.
black and white.
Just a bit
monochrome.
Exactly. But in the 60s, kids learnt how to, and the late 50s, kids learnt how to enjoy themselves. They discovered music. Music became a massive thing, and that music revolution that burst into the scenes.
Yes.
But as I digress there, the BBC cashed in on that with Radio 1. And with Radio 1 they poached how many of those DJs?
Oh my gosh, a lot.
Quite a few.
The Tony Blackburn we mentioned, the Dave Lee Travis, Tommy Vance, Johnny Walker, etc.
Yeah, etc. The list is absolutely endless.
Yes.
It really, really is. Fun fact for you.
Go on.
What was the first song ever on Radio 1?
Oh, I know what this is. Flowers in the Rain by The Move.
Well, if you didn't know that, Mrs. Moonstomper, you wouldn't be much of a musical trivia person.
I'd have to go and sit in the corner, wouldn't I?
Yeah, absolutely. So, moving away from C radio,
yes,
and going into inland pirate radio. So, what's the first inland pirate radio station you remember?
Oh yes, I remember Skyline and Frontline.
Frontline. So
yes.
what were those? Were those?
They catered for reggae lovers, reggae, soul, R&B.
They didn't. In Birmingham, we also had Frontline as well.
Oh yes.
They'd got a big FM transmitter. They used to dot all over the city.
Okay.
And there was also PCRL as well, which is People's Community Radio Link. That started, I think it was 85, and that was also reggae as well.
Yes.
And other cities in the United Kingdom, London. So you saw Adel BT earlier. You saw Dread Broadcasting Corporation in London. That was their version of PCRL Frontline. Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester, Liverpool. They all had pirate radio.
Every up and down the country.
They did.
But people just couldn't get enough, could they?
Well, they couldn't, because it was playing music that people actually wanted to hear, as opposed to music people thought they might want to hear, or music they were paid to play.
Oh.
If that makes sense. So, and they were. So people like Radio 1, they were the people, and BBC, they were the people who drove the charts.
Yes.
They drove that narrative.
They did.
And literally they would have people sitting there who would be employed to listen to music and go yes or no, should we play this? But pioneering people like John Peel, he went his own way and he picked bands that nobody'd ever heard of.
All right.
He just went out there and he was really done a knack for doing that. And I think we're going to do a John Peel special, because that guy deserves a mention.
He's a legend, isn't he?
He is. He's absolutely brilliant. He's discovered so many bands.
Yes, he has.
And I don't know where he found them or how he got them, but he got them radio play, and those guys became famous. And he just got a knack for it.
Seek and you shall find.
Yeah, absolutely. But pirate radio, inland pirate radio, actually gave us that.
Yes.
All the way through the 80s and the 90s, there were radio stations dedicated to rave.
Oh yes, yes.
Dance and house music and hip hop and all sorts of things.
Even on the reggae side, there was like soca and mento as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Calypso.
Absolutely. Crazy times.
Gosh.
But those stations were different, and they were a lot of those were pre-recorded.
Oh yeah.
So you know, a lot of people thought, "Well, that's live." They're not all of the time. So what they'd do is pre-record it, stick it in a tape recorder, and transmit it off the back of an FM transmitter.
Oh.
Literally off the 15th, 16th, 20th floor of the tower block.
Gosh.
And the reason they did that is because we then had FM radio, frequency modulation, which wasn't really around in the 60s.
No, it wasn't.
And the beauty of that was the quality of the broadcast and the fact you could, even with a rudimentary aerial, which was basically a wire attached to another wire in a Y shape across the top of a balcony.
Aerial on the roof.
The aerial was the wire.
Wow.
That's all it was, literally, right to the transmitter. But if you put that onto a scaffold pole, and then you put a dipole aerial on top of that, literally you could transmit 40 miles if the atmosphere was right, if the atmospheric conditions were right, because that would affect the radio signal.
Okay.
And you could reach tens of thousands of people.
You know, sometimes you're like, I'm from Flying North Skyline, sometimes you hear music without a DJ, and the music be playing continuous, and you're thinking, where's the DJ? Because like you said...
It's pre-recorded.
Yes, it did make me wonder.
It's pre-recorded, or he's gone shopping, or he's gone to a spliff, or he's gone to the toilet, or whatever. But that's the way they do that.
Yes.
So in 1992, I didn't do a pirate radio station, but I did a test broadcast. That's still on the internet, and I found that the other day. So
I remember you showing me.
I've actually got my real name on there, like an idiot. Yeah,
should have chose a radio name.
I don't, a schoolboy error, but I did it as a test broadcast, and it's still on there. But you know, I might put it on the screen, I might not, because it will reveal my real identity. And after all, I'm Mr. Moonstomper, so
you certainly are.
I don't mind revealing my real identity. I've got nothing to hide.
No.
But, and the only reason I did that is I wanted to broadcast. And
why not?
And I still do, but what I found out is it's going to start a radio station, that's going to cost me £15,000 to £20,000.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is crazy. Just for that licence and some of the equipment and the ability to broadcast. Then I've got to pay royalties and I've got to pay fees to broadcast the music.
I suppose there's that.
So
bear in mind.
There is indeed. So that was another reason why some people were keen on getting rid of it, because some of those people weren't getting royalties from the music that was being played. So
that's
when
the only trouble.
Exactly, and that's how music works. So when you watch our channel, and on some of our videos, we get what's called it's not a strike, it's a copyright notice.
Yes.
So when you play the Who or the Kinks or
whichever,
and if we play it in its raw uncut form, YouTube will decide that actually belongs to
the artist.
Well,
or the writer.
It doesn't always belong to the artist. It belongs normally to a publisher.
Oh yes.
Such as people like Universal Music Group, who now own masses and masses and masses of music, and literally to play one song they'll want £700 or £800 or dollars. That's a lot of money, and even then you can only have it when they've given full permission, and you have to apply for that, and you have to pay before they'll say yes or no. And if they say no, they're going to keep the money, guys. Yeah, that's pretty scary.
Yes.
There are websites where you can pay a subscription, like £1,500, £2,000, £2,500, £5,000 a year, and you can broadcast music within a set parameter, but it's only the music that they choose, so it will be popular artists, but all royalties are going to the artist. So when we publish our videos, like we did the Who one the other week, any money that's made off that, not that we outsmade money, but if we had 1 million views off that, the money we made off that, if we monetise this channel, will go straight to whoever owns that music.
That's true, yes.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
I suppose it's only right, really.
It's yes and no. Yes and no. I'm always a believer that music should be free, you know. But you know, yeah. But I've made music all my life. You know, I sit there and that's what I do, and I just believe that music should be free. And some of those pirate guys believe it should be free. Others, greedy record producers and promoters.
It's greed, isn't it, really?
And yeah, I mean, they go, oh, no, because they're not making anything. In the meantime, yeah, exactly. But in the meantime, if you're the Rolling Stones, because I think it was the Rolling Stones was the first ever song played on Radio Caroline. I can't remember which song it is, but it's on the screen. That, when that goes out to 12 million people, the Rolling Stones are instantly famous.
Yes.
Because people in those days would go and buy the record, and the Rolling Stones kind of knew that, and other bands kind of knew that. So those royalties from the airplay, you could kind of let that slip, because people would actually go out and buy a physical hard copy. They would then buy more copies of more records because they like the band. They'd go to concerts, and so it worked in other ways.
Yes.
If that makes sense. Yeah, it worked in the short term for them. In the long term, as a pension, then no. If that makes sense, because Radio Caroline kept on playing those for years and years and years, unless they had a copyright bill. That I'm not aware of, but they advertised. So they were a smart radio, and other pirate radios advertised. So you used to listen to Skyline, I used to actually listen to Skyline as well, and they advertised local businesses.
Yes, they did.
All the time, parties, hangouts, that type of thing. And in fact, there's a Skyline radio DJ who lives just down the road from us, is there not?
Yes,
who's been on there forever and ever and ever. In fact, one of your relatives used to be on Skyline.
Yes, I forget his DJ name, but my kid brother used to work on Skyline. Because it's so long ago, I cannot remember his name.
And he was on there for a good while as well.
Yes, he was. He was a good DJ.
Did he have was it a Sunday night slot or something?
I think it was.
Premium Sunday night Lovers Rock slot. There you go. How sloppy is that?
Big up to my kid brother.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're watching.
So, Mr. Moonstomper, the theme tune for Radio Caroline was sung by the Fortunes, a 60s rock and roll band. Did you know that?
I think I did actually.
Yes.
In fact, I did do.
Yes, they
Caroline was a really popular name in the 60s.
Yes, it was.
In fact, I've got a sister called Caroline. Everybody knows that. If you're watching Caroline, big up to you. I don't think you will, but it's not your kind of thing, but if you are, then yeah. Hello.
So, Mr. Moonstomper, there's a little theme tune about saving pirate stations. There's two different bands that sang a theme tune. One was from 1974 called the Roaring 60s, and one do you remember?
I can't remember. I probably do. In the depths of my pea brain somewhere, it might be there. But what were they called? The Roaring.
There's a band called the Roaring 60s from 1974. And then there's the one called Trinity, is like a few years later.
Yes.
From 1977.
That is actually coming back to me. How weird is that? If you remember that, guys, in the comments below, that shows you're an OG. You show your age as well, actually.
Well, this song's called We Love the Pirate Stations.
I remember that. I do remember it ever so well.
Yeah, they're singing about, don't take. There's a few lines, and there's one line that says, please don't take them away. We love our pirate stations. Don't take them away.
No, absolutely. Completely agree.
They loved it that much, they had to sing about it.
Damn right. So, guys, if you remember your pirate radio station, if you grew up listening to pirate radio, which you quite probably did, because from what we can gather, the majority of our audience are, I would say, I'm not going to say ages, but I would say Generation X, maybe. Generation X, Boomer, and maybe a few millennials, I would say. And if you're a youngster, if you're a Gen Z or whatever the other gens are, then guys, if you tuned in, you're OGs as well, and you like the old stuff, and we really appreciate that.
Yes, we
That's
do.
Absolutely amazing. Really is.
Before we go, I forgot to mention, You know, sometimes when when you was younger, you used to mess about with the radio. You find these stations by accident.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I used to do as well. I remember messing about and then
100%. That's what I found. I think was it Sunrise or something like that.
I think there was Sunrise.
Sunrise. I think that was like I'm sure that was Rave or something like that.
Oh, I'm forgetting at this minute.
I can't remember. There was all those. I mean, obviously Frontline. Frontline was really dirty. That was just really that was heavy. That was
it's proper
really heavy. Like PCRL was like that as well. Just really heavy. It was just like whoa. Yeah, really fascinating. But going back to those later ones as well, so those later ones, a lot of those when they were raided.
I used to get raided often, didn't they?
They did. What they would do is literally, the Department of Trade and Industry would turn up, mob-handed with the police. They would raid these guys, confiscate their equipment, take it to court, give them a massive fine. If the radio guys were really quick, they could get up to the top floor of the tower block, dismantle everything, do a runner, and on to the next tower block. So that's why big council estates were really good. So in Birmingham city centre, you had Newtown. Further out, you had Castlevale and Chelmsford Wood, and in Wolverhampton you had Heathtown, and they were all really tall tower blocks where those guys would go and broadcast from, but literally they could tower hop, and they had rigs set up in each tower so they could just like go from one to the other to the other to the other, and the authorities and the council couldn't keep up with it. And how many times have you listened to a pirate radio station and all of a sudden it's gone silent, it's gone off air, and you know full well it's disappeared for 2 days. Those guys have just been busted. They've just been completely busted.
I've noticed that in the past.
Yeah.
You're tuning in and think, where is it, and you think, radio again.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah.
You can just imagine when you said tower block hopping, you can just imagine like Spider-Man.
They were literally, they run from one to the other to the other.
Spin your web and then off you go.
Crazy, absolutely crazy, but true though as well. Very true. And to make those transmitters was really easy. That was the thing. It was costly in one way, in the fact that to purchase. It was the fact that to purchase records and music, and space as well. But once they got that transmitter and the aerials, then the world's an oyster. It is literally.
Yeah, for the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, guys, in the comments below, what was your pirate radio station? What was your free radio station? Where are you from? How long did you listen to it? And is that radio station still going? So, yours still is. Skyline is still going. It's an internet radio station now.
I found out the other day.
Yeah, there's quite a few that are internet radio stations, such as Kiss.
Oh yes.
If you're from London, Kiss is Kiss and Kiss Street. I think they're part of the what's called the Free Radio Network or the Absolute Network or something like that. It's a big network.
It's all in amalgamation with each other.
They are, but those were pirate radio stations, and there were loads and loads and loads who applied for licences, especially internet ones.
Yes.
Which are a downside cheaper, and they're now internet based. So, you know, I think the true spirit of the radio, to coin a Rush song, the spirit of the radio is not dead. It's definitely not dead for me. I love radio, I really do.
I do.
It's one of my go-tos. It really is. You know, especially first thing in the morning. Can't beat a good radio station.
Me as well. When I'm getting ready for work, I've got the radio on.
Absolutely.
Ever since it was tiny, the radio was always on. Getting ready for school up till now.
Grew up with it.
Yes.
Grew up with radio.
It's fabulous. I think it's ace.
Absolutely. So is that all we've got on pirate radio?
I think so. Yes, Mr. Moonstomper.
I think so. And we could have talked for hours and hours and hours about this. It's a really subjective, debatable, moot kind of point, isn't it?
Yes.
You know, because everyone will have a different opinion.
Definitely.
If you've got an opinion, whatever you want to say in the comments, guys, we just love to hear what you've got to say, any stories, anything, ideas, anything. We love to hear from you guys.
Definitely.
It makes our day when we get a comment and we go, great, we've got a comment, especially if you're a new viewer. So don't be shy, come forward, make your mark, and this is your channel, guys. It's for everybody, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
It really is.
Every comment matters.
So Mrs. Moonstomper, the next video, the next exciting instalment of Moonstomper Originals, what have we got coming up next for the guys at home?
We have the history of the Rude Boy.
Rude Boy.
Rude Boy man.
You won't want to miss that.
No.
It's so if you're a skinhead, if you're a Scar fan, if you're just a Moonstomper, stick around and stay tuned. Just stick around and stay tuned. You'll find it as fascinating forever, and we'll, as always, we'll pack it full of facts and photos and whatever else we've got.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and don't forget, guys, midweek, Mrs. Moonstomper's music trivia. Now, not many people have watched that. That will pick up. It's not to everybody's taste. I admit it. What we're going to do is, we eventually, when we get a few of those, we'll do a trial run of those. I think we'll do sort of 8 or something like that. See how it goes. But we'll stick those on a subsection of the channel, so we'll devote a space for those, and then we'll compartmentalise those. So those of you who just want to watch Moonstomper Originals, you get it complete. If you don't want to watch that, that's also fine. And if some guys just want to watch that one, you all know where everything is. And as the channel gets bigger, it'll all become apparent. And by the time we get to 100 videos, if we've got the energy, which we will have, then it's going to look absolutely amazing. So, that was some high too energetic for me.
I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Moonstomper. Alright.
Okay, Mrs. Moonstomper, I think that's it, isn't it?
Yes.
Alright, guys. So, until the next time, much love, peace, and respect. Peace out.
Still a little way different. No matter what color, race, or creed that he may be. You too bad, man. No, check it, girl. Every man do his thing a little way different. The things I do it in a different way from you. The things you do it in a different way from Hang on! This one a different kind of big up, this one the original big up. This one going out to all imperial junglers. Every man do his thing a little way different.